all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now is the first time for public comment. Do we have any public comment? Come forward, please. State your name and address.
Afternoon, I'm Greg Johnson. Used to live in Midtown for 20 years, 808 North 3rd Street. Now I live downtown. I'm here because of last meeting's discussion about Midtown. Give them a park, or it'd be tough to take it away comment from Mrs. Goodlander. This project, this site of what you guys were thinking, what you wanted to put there, has gone over 12 years. You've had our tax dollars to purchase properties and move Midtown into a different direction, and we've gone through, we've gone 12 years of this, from a condo project to then workforce housing. Section 8 is what it's really called. We've had many sit-downs, meetings with you all, with Idaho Housing, workshops with the city of what we really wanted and all that. And some of the comments that were made last week were, I found, poor and disrespectful of the time and money that has gone into these properties and what this neighborhood's all about. There came a time where you asked us what we really wanted, and we gave you a PowerPoint presentation of what the Perry District in Spokane went through. Similar situation, a neighborhood that was tired and kind of didn't have their act together. I ask you to go to Perry District again. It's a fantastic little neighborhood. And so and that was a handful of years ago that happened. Then the Modern Theater thing came up, which was a spectacular, shiny thing that went dim with what was happening there. I saw the wonderful presentation of a civics arts facility that is needed in this city. I have hope that they would be looking at those properties that you have purchased and have held on to for this amount of time. And to hear that, you know, give them a park and it'll be hard to take it away. And we didn't call it a park, call it green space. And quite frankly, it would be just to improve the properties that you have. And I love seeing progress made on that little dirt lot in the last couple weeks. So I guess I've been on, I still call it on the outside for quite a few years. And maybe it's time that I get an application emailed to me from Tony on what seat is up next for coming up for an appointment. Because maybe I need to be at the table with you all to have a better say in what goes on in Midtown and in the city. And I'm probably thinking the same thing on City Council. Maybe I need to have a voice there too. I've seen a fantastic improvement of what's happened here with the mayor being our mayor and also sitting on this board. I've seen vast improvements of communication and the forward thinking that the mayor has. So again, I didn't want to start out being that bitchy neighbor across the alley, but I'm an informed neighbor and I'm an impassioned neighbor of my neighborhood and my city. And there has been a lot of time and money spent on that property, and to think that we need to rush into 2 years because you only have 4 years left to make something happen in that neighborhood is, I'm going to take the words of one of our city council members. I find that's crap. I find that's shortchanging us, and that's a load of crap. A green space is just fine. It's just fine. The amount of money that has been spent by private people purchasing buildings and properties in that neighborhood and making successful businesses and design firms and eateries and that's fantastic. And we have put this dome on top of that piece of property for years. And it's a shame to hear what I heard from Mrs. Goodlander, and it disturbs me a little bit, so, or more than a little bit. So I had to come and say my piece, and I thank you for that. I'm ready to see what we can do with that space, with what you guys are probing into. But I'm gonna be a thorn in your side, a pleasant thorn in your side, and I really think that I need to push more. So if it's sitting on this board, or if it's being a city council member, or whatever I need to do, I'm as busy as all the rest of you, but this seems to be pretty damn important to get her done. So that's why I'm here, and thank you for more than my 2 minutes. So, thank you.
Comment?
Yep,
I got a
Brad?
quick question. Just real quickly here, but what are you wanting to see happen there? Now, one thing I suggested is we do this in the meantime, but we maybe look at requests for proposals and kind of put it out to private enterprise to see what comes up with ideas there. Is that
Brad,
kind of what you're thinking?
comments that day didn't please me at all either, to be quite frank with you. Again, you've had more than all the money and all the time to make something happen there. And yes, you listened to us, but the poor stewardship of the projects that came to the board, and you decided to, as a board, go down that direction and have to fight tooth and nail to turn you folks around. And to hear that, we need to wrap this thing up in 4 years, so we better get some proposals in and we better rush into it. No, I'm not for rushing into any of this anymore. If it stays a green space until that district is folded up and done and it's out of your tax dollar grabs and it goes back to the city, then that's what needs to happen, because I can wag my finger at an elected official because I can say yes or no to that person next time they're up. I can't do that with any of you. You've been appointed, and I have to deal with what is in front of me, and I've done my best, but I can't put up with this, well, let's do a little something. No, we're not gonna do a little something, we're gonna do something big. And if it stays a green space for the next 4 years, I think that neighborhood would be just delighted. And I find that it would be only an improvement to the weed patch and the piles of snow and the people parking there and the crappy parking lot and the crappy lighting and the whole 9 yards that goes on with the properties that you own in that neighborhood. It's disgraceful.
Well, there's a lot of water under the bridge on this property, and I guess that's water under the bridge, but
Yep.
we're kind of at square one on a fresh start there. And I'm supportive of this green space, and I think that's fine. If it's gonna be a green space permanently, then maybe that's okay too. But I'd like to see, my whole goal is to see something big, like you talk about, that's good for,
2030 just brought a
Yeah.
fantastic foresight of what is needed in this city for performance, to congregate, to promote different activities that go on in this city. That would be a fantastic spot.
it could be. And as that theater district progresses, the people that, look at sites and choose them might choose that site, they might not. So,
Well,
the
the
modern
Modern
theater,
Theater looked at it and had a pretty spectacular deal, a foresight of what could happen there. So I would hope that we have got a few barriers out of the way, that we could look at that strongly and not have to start from zero again. It needs to be something for everyone in Midtown, in the city, and not just a housing project, a retail space, a whatever. It is the center of that Midtown, and it needs to be big, and it needs to be important, because people have invested their money and their livelihood around that neighborhood, and they're cooking, and we're sitting on the sidelines.
well, I want you to know that,
What- we
I
have
think that's the
biggest-
goal,
we have spent
something big, and I don't mean, maybe it could be big size-wise, or maybe not big size-wise, but something big and,
We don't have a theater
Big in
district
thought
in this,
for-
the city.
no, and I think you're gonna see the wheels starting to turn to get us a theater district. And maybe that's where it could be.
I'd be the first one to push the shovel to make it happen. But I am not gonna have, I'm not gonna have this board rush into something just to say they've put it into works and they can mark it off their list. That neighborhood is not on a spreadsheet anymore. It is a neighborhood that has had a lot of time and money spent on it for zero returns.
I don't think you're gonna find anyone here that wants to mark it off the spreadsheet and do that. Like I said, there's a lot of water under the bridge, that's not gonna matter anymore, what should have been done or wasn't done. One of the things with a request for proposals is to see what comes before us and see if that's something that's a big idea someone can do that the neighborhood embraces. There may not be anything, but it's gotta be something the neighborhood embraces. Maybe it's the theater, maybe it's something we haven't even thought of here. But I think
But
we've got a blank slate to start forward here.
Brad, to have a member on this board who has been there from the very beginning, to then tell us that, well, once you give them green grass, it's hard to take away. That was wrong. I'm sorry, that was wrong. That was like, no. You use our tax dollars, you were appointed to this board, and we're trusting you to steward that money and steward that vision to what's best, and you've blown it for the last 12 years, and then you're upset that someone wants to paint a wall and throw some grass down, and you're gonna have trouble taking it away from us? Who? What
Well,
is
you know,
that?
We're all individual people here, so the way you took what somebody said here, I guess that's,
Under her title, she is on the Ignite board.
Right.
So, yes, you're all
she
individuals.
has her opinions, I have my opinions.
Totally.
So,
We've had that board member on that seat from the very beginning of this, when this has been cooking. And it has boiled over to being slop, and it needs to change.
all right. Well, I know we gotta get on to other things, but I want you to understand, I'm open to something big there that's good for Midtown. I think you're gonna find this board as a whole wants to move
I think the
forward.
city and I think Midtown's ready for something big. I really do.
All righty.
So, thanks, guys.
Any other public comment? Thanks.
Evening, afternoon. Susan Snedeker, Coeur d'Alene. As someone who, if you go back to the minutes, the original minutes of the Planning Commission review of the proposed urban renewal district way back when, you might notice my comments were to include Midtown. I was a planning commissioner at the time, Brad remembers, and they were to include Midtown, because Midtown really needed help. Here we are, and we're still trying to decide what in God's name to do with Midtown. The neighbors have spent countless hours going over it. As Greg said, I mean, so many of us. You know, it's our time too. It's our neighborhood. It's something that we all love. It's been a part of us. I lived there for almost 30 years. And to hear that now we're down to the wire is absolutely appalling. Time and time again, as Greg pointed out, PowerPoint presentations, testimony, public testimony, people leaving jobs to come here and testimony. It was all for naught. I don't get it. I absolutely do not get it. So now you're starting over in square one, and maybe somebody will come up with a great idea. I just don't understand. This has been years of this, years. How many of you have spent years on projects? Lobbying for projects, okay, lobbying for, you're the phone company, does that count? Okay. But lobbying for projects, years and years and years. Took 8 years to get Person Field, 8 years. So think about that. And think about Midtown. And maybe, do we have to have another neighborhood meeting to do it? I think, let's honor Greg. Let's honor the people that take the time to come to these meetings, to study the issue, to speak eloquently, not off the, not with form scripts. Of course, I do speak off script sometimes, but let's honor the neighbors again. And consider what he said. And please, not one more thing. not going back to the drawing board one more time. Take a look at what you have. Tony certainly has it in his file someplace, don't you, Tony? You could pull that up, all the things that have been brought forth. You know, they ought to be all on your little computer. You know, give it to the new members so they have some clue as to what's happened over the years. Sorry, I have to go back on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Thanks for that. Now I'd like to welcome Sarah Garcia. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Every third Wednesday, live TV.
Yeah, it's only an hour and a half a month, isn't that what Dave said?
Yep.
Yep.
Anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to get some board action on approval of minutes for the board meeting from last month and the special call meeting we had with the city council. Can be done singularly or together, however you want.
Two separate motions.
Yep.
I move we approve the May 17th board meeting minutes.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries.
I move we approve the May 25th, 2017 special call meeting with the city council minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further comment? All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries also. Finance report. Commissioner Arman.
So the finance report for the month of May. First of all, we'll start out with the Lake District balance sheet. In the asset category, the Lake District experienced a $21,542 increase in cash assets for the April month end. Receivables, there were no significant issues for the month. And other assets, the Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account earned $27 on the balance for the month of May. On the liabilities and fund balance, mortgage and notes payable line item was an increase of $54,008 for May, which represents a standard month of debt service of $5,992, offset by a $60,000 draw on the new 2017 Washington Trust Bank note. $50,000 required note draw, plus a $100,000 tax loan fee. $10,000 Washington Trust Bank loan fee, I'm sorry. All other liabilities and parameters were either unchanged for the month, including the 2% credit due to the yards for May. The P&L for the Lake District starts out. Lake District received $52,462 in tax increment revenue from the county in May. Professional fees line item includes North Park Drive demolition and asbestos removal costs of $31,278. Miller-Stauffer Memorial Field grandstand analysis of $15,000. The Miller-Stauffer preliminary parking garage analysis for $16,056. Debt service loan fee value of $10,000 is on the Washington Trust Bank loan fee for the issuance of the 2017 note. All other P&L expenditure line items were normal for the month. Turning now to the River District, the balance sheet, the assets category. The River District experienced a $164,845 decrease in cash assets from April month end due primarily to the payments for the Saltese Way revitalization project. Liabilities and fund balance, all parameters were either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% due to the arts. P&L for the River District, District received $59,953 in tax increment revenue from the county in May. The agency-funded programs line item reflects a $217,314 payment made to the Saltese Way project in May, and all other P&L expenditures were normal. So that's the finance report for the month of May. As far as receivables, or excuse me, payables, yeah. We're starting to get into the heat of the summer, and obviously there's a lot of projects going. So to start out with, we do have the legal costs. Elam and Burke was $3,815.20. Holly Troxell was $5,847. The Innovation Collective, it's our annual payment of $2,000 for the 2017 Think Big Festival. Some of the other projects that are now in progress. There was no payment for the North Park Drive Land Exchange project for this month. There was a $40,193.22 payment for the Saltese Way revitalization project for design. That was a design payment to Welsh Comer. There was $190,449.68 payment on the Saltese Way revitalization project. This is for the contractor and also for some engineering for that. Downtown parking structure project had a payment of $27,750. And finally, the Four Corner project Memorial Park element was $140,480. That's the payables for the month.
Just one comment to the board. You know, I put the 2017 Think Big Festival on there for board consideration. I mean, you've given that to the festival for the past couple of years, and they made a request to see if the board would be willing to once again provide those funds for this next festival. So it's an option for the board should they decide to do it.
But we did budget for it.
Yes, it's in the budget. Yes.
I'll entertain some board action then on approval of the Think Big Festival.
I propose that we donate $2,000 to the Innovative Collection for the Think Big Festival.
Looking for a second.
Yes.
Second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Now, board action for the
Finance.
finance report and receivable, or payables.
I move that we approve the Finance Committee reports and the payables for May.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the finances? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Now, there's going to be discussion on FY 2018 budget.
Yes, I've talked to Commissioner Arman. I'm going to lead the discussion on that. Basically, I'd just like to have a preliminary budgeting discussion on several fronts regarding an amended FY17 Lake District budget and the two FY18 budgets for the Lake and River District. So I just passed out the cover sheet, and I'm going to put for the audience. So we'll start with the amended Lake District FY17. I can decrease that size at all. So basically, as you know, the board made a lot of decisions in FY17 that weren't quite in the budget, but we knew that going along, so it is kind of up to us to go ahead and amend the Lake District budget for FY17. So you'll see on the screen and on your handout that we are proposing the following amendments to the Lake District FY17 budget. No changes for the River District FY17 budget. So first off, kind of the red numbers are the numbers I'm going to discuss, basically. So the estimated property tax revenue increased from $3.95 million to $4.27 million, and the property rental receipts decreased from $127,611 to $92,490 because of some of the moves we made on our property divestitures and demolitions, basically demolitions. On the expenses side, you see on the professional services, we have a net cost increase for the Lake District from $59,130 to $159,130. Due to the following initiatives, we had the Welch Comer North Park Drive contract for $25,000, Miller Stauffer Parking Facility Conceptual Analysis for $15,000, Miller Stauffer Memorial Field Grandstand Analysis for $15,000, 2 property appraisals for $6,000, 2 building demolition projects, the 4 houses on North Park Drive that were $24,000, and the 214 3rd Street demo that's going to be happening here in July, August at $9,000. The legal counsel work for the Washington Trust Bank Note Series 2016 refinancing at $19,000. Legal counsel work for the new URD planning effort at $10,000, and we had a net gain of $23,000 because we didn't fund the government relations contract. So that's kind of the changes. A lot of changes happened in that line item for the budget. You see on the utilities, we have a decrease from $12,420 to $9,990. Once again, that was due to property demolitions. Property management, we have an increase from $87,866 to $116,047. The amended values include demolition costs for the buildings once located at 712 and 720 Young Avenue. Demolition costs for 213 4th Street and 308 Coeur d'Alene Avenue were already in the original budget. Those are planned to be knocked down for the parking structures, you know, this summer. The amended value also includes $7,000 for repaving, striping Midtown surface parking lots, and $25,000 for the installation of irrigation sod fencing on the Midtown Bear lots that the board approved last month. Public art, that value increased from $78,931 to $85,475 due to the projected increase in revenue receipts. Capital acquisition expense, the original budget was $0. The new value is $750,500, and that was due to the real property acquisition at 214th North 3rd Street. Debt interest on the non-OPA IRA notes, and we had a decrease from $287,733 to $122,106 due to refinancing of the Washington Trust Bank Note Series 2016. The debt principal of non-OPA IRAs increased from $1,749,990 to $1,779,955 due to the same refinancing on that note. Planning, a large increase from $75,000 to $610,000, reflecting a parking facility design cost of $350,000 and $210,000 for the IHFA, the Housing Company Joint Venture Termination Agreement related to the 823 North 4th Street property. Agency-funded programs, we have a decrease from $1,366,250 down to $895,800, primarily due to shifting the collaborative education facility payment to FY18 and inclusion in FY17 of half of the board's commitment to the next phase of the Four Corner Master Plan element, which is Memorial Park element. So that one moved around a little bit, but mainly was for those, the shifting of the NICE project in FY18 and the board's commitment to the Memorial Park, which half of that will be spent by the end of this fiscal year. And the special project reserve decreased from $500,000 to $250,000. A lot of information. I shared this with you a little while ago to help so you can kind of take a peek at it, but as you can see, it doesn't change the ending fund balance significantly for the Lake District. We just kind of move things around a little bit, had some increased revenues, had some decreased cost savings. So I appreciate any comments you have on that as we move forward on that amended budget. No motions are needed tonight. I'm not seeking any approvals, just kind of a conversation.
Just a quick question. What is the Midtown placemaking?
Midtown placemaking is just opportunities in Midtown for projects, for irrigation, for all that streetscaping we put in. We paid funds for the irrigation and tree maintenance.
So that's just budgeted each year, the 5,000?
Well, it can move around depending on what we want to do in Midtown.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Tony, some of that's you're projecting through September 30, right? A lot of that we haven't expended. You're just trying to project where we're going to end up by September.
Exactly.
Yes, so we will be asking for board action in September.
In August.
August.
Yes.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Okay.
Thank you, very, very good.
So the next item is going to be the FY18 budgets. I have a handout for you. Let's tap it. Okay. So this is kind of a summary sheet for the preliminary draft budget for the FY18 districts for the River and the Lake District. I'd just like to chat with you about several key elements and assumptions I'm making to kind of get any direction the board might have that might, there's $1 fine coming at the Rotary. Just to get some guidance. So I'd like to start with the Lake District. You see, I have a note draw amount of $7,500,000. That goes on our new note for the 2017 Washington Trust Bank note. The $7.5 million is comprised of a $6.5 million anticipated cost for the parking facility construction and a proposed $1 million for Memorial Field Grandstand redevelopment. As you recall, the board was approached by the city and other stakeholders about potentially helping with the grandstand analysis, and so I went ahead and put in $1 million for that initiative, should the board want to pursue that. So my recommendation is that we put it in the budget, and if the board chooses to act on that initiative, then you have funds in the budget. If you choose not to, then you don't have to spend it. Yes,
That's under note draws?
It is.
under no draws, yeah.
Okay.
Line item 7.
So just something to think about. Like I said, we don't have to make a decision tonight, but I'll need some direction as we formalize these budgets, but that's my thinking at this time. The $6.5 million for the parking garage, it might be a little high. Hopefully it's a little high, but as Brad will share with you here under his committee report, we've been approached about potentially burying the utilities in the alley to make that project more aesthetically pleasing and maybe more functional, and that's going to be $200,000. So there might be some additional cost to this project. We're going to hopefully get good bids, but we might not. So having a little bit more in the budget might be prudent. The next line item is highlighted in yellow is a property divestitures, $2,425,000 for the Lake District. So my thinking there is that we would divest in FY18 of the North Park Drive lots, the 311 Lakeside Avenue, and the 301 Lakeside Avenue properties. We would not divest of the Young Avenue properties in FY18. We would delay that decision until a solution can be derived with the stakeholders and the interested stakeholders on that initiative, and we might do that in FY19. Or it could be done sooner if a resolution is coming forth, but I did not include it in the budget. As you recall, the Washington Trust Bank requires for a draw on the 2017 note that we divest of $1.3 million of real property assets before we can draw more than $6.5 million, or is it $6 million or $6.5 million? $6 million. So we have to sell $1.3 million in real property assets before we can exceed $6 million on the $10 million note. So that's why we have plenty of room in here to gain that amount of revenue on the property divestitures.
Mr. Chairman, question for Tony. When we're thinking about the construction of the parking garage, is it the Doug's Muffler shop there? Do you think we're going to save that for construction staging and sell it later? Or I'm sorry, I didn't hear if that was the plan in the 2.4 million sale.
No, talking with the design folks, we do not need that for staging.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and sell it. We do have some interested people that want to buy it that are local, so that I thought that might be a good thing to go ahead and put into the budget to see if we can divest of that. But we do not need it for staging. We can sell as is.
Okay.
So the $175,000 is the price that you
That's an
appraised
estimate
at?
I have. I'm trying to be conservative on that. Hopefully it'll go for more. That's based on a little bit of research, but not much.
Okay.
So the next highlighted item that I'd just like to talk to the board about is the agency-funded programs on the Lake District, the $9,639,550. So what I'm thinking there is that we have $6.5 million in there for the parking structure. We have Memorial Park at $779,550. Once again, that's half of the $1.55 million that the board's committed to. And talking with the city and with some of the other stakeholders, it'll probably roll into FY18 for the other half of that. We don't know exactly how that's going to be split, but for budgeting purposes, it's probably a pretty safe assumption to make. The NICE project, like I mentioned, the $2.5 million commitment, half of that will be spent in FY18, half in FY19. And also in this number is a Memorial Field Grandstand at $1 million. So that's all included in this agency-funded program. So a lot of agency funding proposed for FY18, but I think it's all for projects the board has heard about and has kind of given some initial agreement to, other than the grandstand analysis. I know we haven't really talked about that, but that's the number they came up with for really renovating that grandstand and making it a top-notch asset to the community. Switching over to the River District on that same page, you'll see I have a $4 million note draw, and this is on a new note that I'm proposing for the River District. This is the expanded River District, and I'm going to briefly throw up another graphic here. Wrong mouse again here. Let's get the right mouse here. So I'm going to throw this up here. This is pretty fresh as of today. This is from Welch Comer trying to look at what the expanded expanded river district will look like. Where can I make that bigger? Can I make that bigger? I'm not seeing it anywhere. I'm too far away.
If you start the slideshow.
Can you see the slide? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, he was.
Phil, you got it? Could you grab it from there, Phil? I can't see that small print.
From current slide, it should.
There it is. Thank you.
And this next one zooms in a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's great.
Thanks, Phil.
So this kind of gives you an idea of what we'll be talking about for the expanded river district area. As you know, we can expand the river district by 10%, which is 30 acres. So this graphic depicts an expanded river district in the red area. Once again, this is just an idea at this time. We have to come up with an idea for budgeting purposes. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing we have to deal with. We have to put money in the budget for our planning effort, even though there's going to be a lot of planning efforts going on this site coming down the line. But we have to kind of understand, maybe in a very logical place or a sense, where the roads network is going to be for this project, where the bone's going to be to help develop this mill site. So we're thinking right now that the road system would be somewhere like this. That would go through the mill site, which would be in the expanded river district. Then you would have a part of the road system go up to Celtice. That would be in the new district area. And you'd have a part of the road network that would go up to Celtice in the new district area. So for the budgeting purposes for the River District expanded area, the estimate from Welch Comer is about $4.5 to $5 million for the entire road network. And this is a signature road effort that we're talking about. It's 100 feet wide. It's kind of like a government way type of model that Phil's going to talk about a little more in detail. So it would be a signature type project, which would kind of eats up quite a bit of space through there. You know, you're kind of looking at 100 feet right of way. But this would be for the roads, all the utilities, sewer, water, dry utilities that would service the mill site, and then there obviously would be laterals that would come off this to service these other uses. Once again, these are just ideas at this time about what potential development might look like along that road network. You have a big park expansion, you have park along the water, you have some residential. Once again, very preliminary, but we need to kind of do this for the budgeting effort to kind of get a sense. So with all that said, I'm putting in $3 million for construction of this road network. The challenge we have is that this expanded river district will not materialize till January 1st, 2018. You have that maybe if we're lucky, we can get under construction on things in March. And so you only have like 6 months of actual construction time. So how much of a road can you get built in 6 months? And maybe, I'm thinking we can get maybe $3 million of this $4 million effort, and the rest of these costs would be in the new district. So that's my logic for coming up with that $3 million. The other $1 million would go to development of potential park space. So, you know, would there be opportunities to develop any park space pending the outcome of any type of master planning effort that is coming down the path, or what have you? So that's the $4 million draw amount. And the draw is based on a $7 million note that we would issue with a financing institution, and that's based solely on the horsepower of the existing river district. So no new revenues generated by anything in here would look to service that debt. We have enough, I'll use the term horsepower in the river district, to fund or to service a $7 million note without any of the expanded elements coming online to help fund that. We might want to increase that over time as these developments occur, but that's the thinking right now. Once again, kind of throwing a lot of stuff at you right now, but we'll come back to this.
Just a quick question, as long as we're there. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, of the River District, isn't there a part of that that's in the Lake District?
Yes,
that would-
this blue area here.
So,
Yeah,
so
that's
that,
skinny part.
that would be still in, it'd still be in the Lake District, obviously. And the northern part of that, that's the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way, is that correct?
Right,
Yes,
north of Lake
yes.
District, yeah.
Okay, so that could all be parkland too, but it would just be funded through the Lake District.
Funded by Lake District, yes. Phil, you might have to escape me out of this so I can go back to the other one. I don't know if I can escape out of here. Thank you, sir. So bringing back up the budget, so that kind of gives you some background as to why we're looking at a $4 million draw on a potential $7 million note. You kind of go down into the River District to the $82,700. That's basically what the interest would be on that $4 million draw for the fiscal year of 2018. The $264,800 would be potential principal paid on that level of draw on the note. So just to have some budget level information there on debt obligations for that note. Planning, I have $100,000 in the planning. I'm thinking $75,000 for the agency's help on a master planning effort for the expanded river district and the new districts. That might be just right. I'm putting $100,000 in there, but I'm kind of thinking 75, and we'd have a little 25,000 for other planning efforts. The 6.810 on agency public improvements. Once again, we have get the right page here. We have 2.8 million of that is for the Celtice Way project. We'll finish that up in 2018 as per the original budget. We have roads of 3 million. We have public space of 1 million. So that's the majority of that $6.810 million value. So that's what builds that up.
I think you might be a little light on planning, Tony.
A light?
I think it could be double that. Right out there from what I've seen.
We can put anything in you like. We have the wherewithal. You want me to double planning?
I'm open to suggestions, but from what I've seen, I think it could be double that. And I think that piece of land is so important to this community, it deserves top-notch.
Okay, I'll go ahead and, I'll go ahead and double that. Okay. And the final number there, the $200,000, this is interest on the Bad Axe acquisition. So as you recall, the city of Coeur d'Alene is buying this property for $8 million, and they're looking for the agency to reimburse the city over time. So conversations to date with the city, they are willing to go ahead and kind of do interest only for the first several years, and looking at maybe a balloon payment at year 4. So that's why that $200,000 is in there. So we're looking at and the way we came up with that $200,000 is $8 million over 4 years at 2.5% interest. So that's the interest on that note for $200,000 for each year, and then a balloon at year 4 of $8 million. Which is good for us, because if we have more time, then we can service that debt more effectively and more efficiently. So that's kind of where we're at on that budgeting issue there. Those were the major elements I wanted to chat with you, kind of get your direction, get your sense that we're kind of on the right path as we kind of continue the budgeting process. And kind of seeing the feedback I'm getting, it looks like you're comfortable with where we're at right now as we move forward. If I'm missing anything, or?
Tony, it looks like all the other categories are just based upon historical. If we go down to everything, notices, communications, insurance meetings, those are all based off what we've spent in the past, no changes for the.
No significant changes, no foreseen big issues. And we do have special project reserves in each district of, $500,000 for the lake and $250,000 for the river, just in case something comes up that we didn't anticipate.
You're showing about a $3 million drawdown on between our fund balance to start the year and our completion fund balance for the end of 2018.
Yes.
Okay. So Once again, a lot of expenditures in the River District potentially.
Chairman,
Debbie?
the Lake District planning, what's included in that number?
District planning, it's just funds for potential planning efforts that the board might see. I don't have anything specific in mind, but I always like to have that funding in place. Once again, the board doesn't have to spend it, but just in case something comes along, like for a Midtown initiative or something on the performing arts side, depending on what kind of consultant fees might be for that effort. So I think we have enough in there to cover us for what I foresee as a planning initiatives.
Okay.
But once again, we can go higher, but
Further questions or comments? Looks good, Tony.
let's see, do I have anything else on that front? I don't think so. Okay.
That's it on the money report.
That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan, how about an update on the parking commission, or the parking committee?
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Tony, did you have handouts, or are we just going over the numbers on
I
burial?
do have handouts for that.
I've got some handouts on burial expenses.
I hope you have more
Yes.
details on that. on
Not
this
true
burial.
burial expenses, but utility burial.
Okay, well, let's get started here. So there's some discussion about how nice it would be to bury those utilities in the alley if possible. I think this is a work in progress. Maybe we can improve on these numbers. 148,000 in round numbers to Avista Utilities, 61,000 Frontier Charter Communications. What is Charter Communications, Tony?
TV.
That's not Spectrum, is it? Or is that another name?
What
for
day it is,
Spectrum?
yeah.
Is that a
Time
parent
Warner,
company of
Spectrum's Time
Okay, 20,000 Charter Communications, Spectrum, so it's 229,000 total. So we're presenting that to you for your consideration and direction on that, but it's a big chunk of money. The alley is going to be torn up, just as another issue here. The alley will be torn up during the course of construction. So I think something to think about in the future, on the building we have there at Third and Lakeside where the Greek restaurant is, we have that sewer issue where we don't have a direct sewer connection for that building. It goes around about under another building and so forth. That probably would be a timely time to look at running some sewer through the back of that building and getting it connected into the alley while the alley's torn open there. Let's see here. We had a meeting on the garage, and it's progressing along. Of course, based on direction from the council, we're roughing in a couple of retail spaces. It could be one big space or two small spaces. There's just some discussion that when the time is right, we might contract with a commercial real estate firm to lease those spaces out, and roughing in an area for the, potentially that could be for the transit center there in the future if our transit system gets to the point that we need a downtown transit location in the future. But right now, that's just, all that is being roughed in for the future, so there's no misunderstanding. There won't be a transit center going in there with the construction of the garage. In the meantime, there'll be 3 or 4 parking spots that'll be in there where the future potential transit center could be. Also, based on some direction from the mayor and council, we're looking at having ticket stations with an arm that raises up and down instead of the loops that the people have to walk over to. So any questions on the garage? I think probably in, I don't know, 10 days to 2 weeks, there'll probably be another update meeting, Tony, don't you think? The way they were talking, yeah. So it's coming along. And on the parking commission, the city parking commission, the only thing I would say is we held a special call meeting, and it was voted unanimously, as I recall, to increase the parking fees from $1 to $2 per hour at the Independence Point lot only. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman? Go ahead, Tony.
I just, to follow up on Commissioner Jordan's comments, I think the design team is going to look to some direction from the board on burying the utilities. So I'm not sure how you want to address that, if we want to put it on maybe the next board meeting agenda to discuss that, but I think if the board wants to do that, they have to kind of get in line with the design for that, and to kind of get things dialed in, so.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we do it at the next board meeting, is that soon enough to see if we can improve those numbers any?
Improve the numbers, mean like get a better deal, or?
Yeah, like Donald Trump does.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
I don't know, I'm not.
Is the next meeting soon enough? I don't know if there's a way to improve on this or not.
I'm not sure how you improve on utilities.
Yeah, the 61,000 with Frontier kind of caught our eye, and, there's another option too. Some of this, could possibly be put in conduit and then just fastened to the back side of the parking structure, and probably wouldn't really stand out too bad. Probably some of the low voltage type of wiring could be done. I'm not sure about a Vista, so that's something we can explore too. The architects raised that question, so as Tony said, we're open to your direction on that.
Are these utilities in the alley? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they're hanging up on the power poles right now.
That run through the alley? I guess my thoughts is that $229,000 is a lot of money to bury utility poles that are in an alley. I could see it if there were some sight lines, but there aren't any sight lines. There's not really gonna be any sight lines or views that are gonna, if you're from the garage viewing south, right? If there's future buildings there, the only other thing you're going to see is the parking garage, right, to the north. That's just my initial thought, $229,000 just to bury those lines. And my thought is that burying lines is always done for sight lines, for people that are viewing, whether it be residential or commercial. And so that's a lot of money to spend on burying lines that are in an alley that back up to a parking structure. And so that's kind of my 2 cents.
I agree, that's what we're wrestling with. It's a lot of money.
Just to jump on Brad's last comment, I think it'd be worth exploring any conduit options, because I kind of agree with Steve too. It's a lot of money to do that, and I think there's some type of a medium that's there, and there's really nothing in front of that building. It'd be I'd have a totally different opinion if this was on the other side of the building.
Maybe we can find some way in between here to try and clean that up a little bit.
I think it's worth looking at.
You want to alert the architects, Tony?
The only view
Look
you'd
into
have is
that.
if you park on the second floor and you're looking out. I mean, you're gonna.
That's it.
That's a lot of money for that view.
They've, also, as I recall, I just thought of this isn't really, well, I guess this has to do with the same issue. They're looking at a potential skywalk connection on the Greek restaurant building. I'll just call it the Greek restaurant building, for lack of a better term. I don't think they're looking at one on the Doug's Muffler building, and I'm not sure if we should be or not. I can see potentially the value of that property could be increased quite a bit if it has, access to parking to meet the parking requirements. That really improves the desirability of that lot there.
So then next month we'd make a decision on that, or?
What I would do is I would probably take this idea to see what it would take to hang the utilities on the side of the building, to see if that's feasible and what cost that would be if I assume the utilities would have to be willing to do that too, and to see
Well,
what kind
that'd
of
be a cost, it just hopefully wouldn't be
pushback do we
much.
get. But
Yeah.
I'll run those traps
Maybe it's an in-between.
and get back with the board on that.
Maybe we could do that as a board work day. We could all go out there and
Blow some wire through.
Kind of like a community volunteer
Right.
day, yeah, we can go out
Pulling
there. and-
wire.
Yeah. Either way, the alley's gonna get torn up for footings and construction, so at some point, we probably should coordinate on that sewer connection.
We definitely need to do the plumbing. Mick?
Brad, are they looking at skywalk connections anywhere else off the top floor?
On Coeur d'Alene Avenue to the north there, I think isn't it 3, Tony, that they've got across there?
2 on Coeur d'Alene and 1 on the backside going over to the Olympia building. Those are the 3 that they're just idea, but none of those have to be built now. They're already on the outside.
The footings and.
Not even on footings. The footings will be outside the structure. They would just put them in later, so.
Most of the buildings, and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but most of those buildings aren't probably the highest and best use of the property on the north side of Coeur d'Alene Avenue, so there's a good likelihood that, you know, this could create some synergy for some bigger developments over there, which is the hope.
All righty. How about the jobs report, Commissioner?
Well, I just have some stats here that I just wanted to share, so I'm kind of venturing off into Olivia's old job, and I got a lot of these numbers from the person that, Sam, at the Idaho Department of Labor, but I just thought these were some interesting stats to share. And first on population, is that the state of Idaho's population is forecasted to grow 250,000 people from now until 2025, or an annual growth rate of 1.4%, which is nearly 3 times as high as the national growth rate. So Idaho's doing pretty well there. The interesting part of it is that nearly all of the new residents that are moving to the state of Idaho will be retirees. And as a result of that, the under 15 population as a percent is going to decline in the state between now and 2025. And the 65 and over population is going to grow from, it says 14.7% to 17.3%. I think that's some of the things that we're seeing now, and we'll see how that affects the economy, see how that affects the job market. 2/3 of the population growth is expected in Ada and Canyon counties in the south and Kootenai County in the north. So those are the 2 areas of growth in the state of Idaho. On the jobs front, the average earnings in the state is up to $20.86 an hour, which is up from $16.50 an hour in 2013. So we're up $4.36, but we're still below the national average, so we have a little work to do there. Statewide unemployment dropped to 3.4% as of May. In the Coeur d'Alene metro area, it's 3.7%, so we're doing well there. Employment growth in the whole state of Idaho for 2017 is 3.1%, and 2% is considered good. So again, employment growth is good in Idaho. In the last 5 years in our area, the Coeur d'Alene metro area, we've added 3,531 jobs. Of those, the leader in that is the consumer services sector. That is hotels, restaurants, salons. That they grew by a little over 1,000 jobs. Healthcare, as we know, if we've seen the explosion of Kootenai Health, that has provided a growth of 961 jobs. Education is next at 441 jobs. So I guess if you're to sum all of this up, job growth is very good. Still need to work on the level of pay. And we've heard that over and over again, that we need to recruit and bring in higher paying jobs.
That's Idaho.
Yeah. So those are just some stats I'd like to.
That's great.
Wanted
Thank
to
you.
share.
That's good, thanks.
I do feel better that there's more older people moving in here.
You'll have company.
Yeah, I'll have company.
Yeah.
Are those adjusted for inflation, the $2013 versus the 2016?
The first item under my report is a North Park Drive initiative. I'd like to invite Phil Boyd to talk about the land exchange update as well as the boundary line adjustment.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll skip forward here. So the North Park Drive subdivision, you guys have seen this exhibit over and over again. But what we wanted to update you on is a development that we identified during the process of working on the land exchange. So obviously, one of the first things that we do is pull title reports on properties when we get ready to do an investigation or any kind of land exchange on them. And down here, these 2 blue lots here, we identified in this little red area right here, an interesting, we'll call it encumbrance on the property from 1922. That little piece of property was donated by the Curl family to the city of Coeur d'Alene for tennis courts. And we could find no evidence, and nobody has any recollection, even at the mayor's age, that there were tennis courts there.
Did you check with Ron Ettinger?
That was, no, good idea, but that might be, so.
I think he was first on the council back then.
So the first thing we started looking at is, well, do we really need to put the lots there, or should we just leave it park? And we went through and looked at that with Tony and Bill Greenwood and the city, Mike Gridley, and
there was kind of a little bit of a push to let's just leave it park. Tony pushed back on that and said, you need to make a bigger effort at trying to get that encumbrance removed. Because obviously it's part of your Ignite's financial plan. So we've undertaken that effort, and Randy Adams, the city attorney staff, did an excellent job on researching the descendants of the Curl family. It was actually really fascinating what he did, but very impressive piece of work. The short story is the mayor reached out to those folks, told them the story, and they have asked for additional information, which maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I sent them quite a bit of data on the project, trying to give them an overall development of the area. Actually, one of the descendants is, I think, a Parks and Recreation director in California. And so they were very fascinated and interested in the project. The point of the story is though we can't really move forward without that encumbrance removed from the project. There's also another encumbrance that we knew about that Council Gookin referenced in a council meeting about the congressional designation lot. And you guys might have heard him talk about that at the city council meeting, but it has to do with when it went from Fort Sherman to the city of Coeur d'Alene, a large portion of this was donated by the federal government to the city for a park. And we can work around that through the Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, and do some land trades with the BLM up in this area. So Mike Gridley, City Attorney Gridley, thinks we can solve that one. The Curl one obviously takes some action by a private party. So this exhibit is actually one of the exhibits that I sent the Curl family so they could get an idea. You can see we put up here and showed them that there's going to be pickleball and futsal courts, which are currently more popular in our community. Certainly pickleball is than tennis is. And we were trying to explain the nature of what's popular in Coeur d'Alene, and hopefully that they would see that their I think it would be great-grandparents, their vision for courts in that area would be realized.
Is that even big enough for a tennis court?
This here?
Yeah.
No. And even Park Drive here occupies some of it. So there, since 1922, there's been more than one.
Few changes.
Yeah, things that happen in there. And we went back and did a little bit of research, but at some point it's not worth the return on investment to get too deep into that.
So what's the, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but what's the legality on this? A descendant can remove this? Or can you go through quiet title action to remove that? Or how big of a cloud is that?
I will channel City Attorney Mike Gridley and say to you that what Mike said is, yes, you probably could go through a quiet title action. The more appropriate is to directly reach out and contact the descendants and say, look, will you descendants remove this encumbrance on it?
Just to add to that, you would have to do that in a quiet title action to the extent that you could identify the descendants anyway. So you can't just do a quiet title and publish notice when you're aware that there are descendants that would have an interest.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems interesting on whether or not the descendants would agree, what if some agree and some don't agree, and what lineage of descendants would have the say in it. I mean, it seems like it's pretty nebulous on how these descendants could clear the title, and whether they would agree to or not. So it'd probably have to have a quiet title go along in conjunction with it, wouldn't it?
I think if you could identify who the appropriate descendants are and they're willing to release their interest,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have to do a quiet title too.
All right. Interesting.
So then just the last little detail here. This is the boundary line adjustment. The map is obviously turned, so north is now up. I should have oriented you guys on the previous map, but north is now up. Northwest Boulevard is over here. You guys won't probably remember this complicated series of steps that we had to move through to accomplish the land transfer, but one of them was Commissioner Jordan and Mayor Whitmire felt it important to have the lot depth here, so we had to move this alley back and shrink the triangle piece. And so the way that we did that is we did a boundary line adjustment amongst the properties owned by Ignite. And as you also remember, this Garden Avenue was vacated. And so half of Garden Avenue is now part of the Ignite properties. So we're teed up to complete the land transaction, which is trade the triangle for the blue, because you already own half of the pink. And it would be actually for half of the pink and the two blue areas there. So that's where we're at in the process, but as we had worked through this issue with Tony, his recommendation was that we pause on the process, give the Curls the opportunity to respond, and I think he wanted me to come and explain that to the board, and make sure that the board was in agreement with that direction.
Do we have a timeline on when they're supposed to be responding by, or how many people?
I had received an email back from them on Monday, and they had said, gee, thanks for this information. This is exactly what we're looking for, and we'll get back to you very quickly. So I'm not sure what very quickly means, but that's what their response to me was. They seem like, it's funny from email, but it just seemed like a very nice bunch of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
good.
I guess that was city property there, I guess, before we did the swap and put lots in there, right? That was just part of the parkland there, right, where the tennis courts.
Well, the swap hasn't occurred yet.
Technically still is.
So I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just part of the city property right now, and it's just sat there through the years.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And you guys might also remember that the lots are slightly more, are reconfigured. You can see here that they're reconfigured.
Oh,
This will happen in the subdivision part of the process, but without getting into a ton of details, when we redid the park, this resulted in a better open space corridor, kind of looking back through here. And it just wasn't such a narrow stretch when we moved the pickleball courts and the futsal court over here. And reoriented the field.
what's your estimated timeline on having sellable lots?
At this point, it would be later in 2017. I'm thinking we're in the November timeframe now.
Okay. And that's taken into account the tennis court donation.
Yeah, my estimation of it. So we would be, assuming that we get something happening this month, we would make a submittal at the end of July. And so you've got August, September, October, November.
Yeah, and you can't really separate the other lots that aren't, it kind of mucks up the process to separate the other lots that aren't encumbered.
Correct, and we would end up doing two subdivisions. This one could be a short subdivision in the future, but,
Yeah. That's one thing that could happen if this gets held up.
yeah, good suggestion.
Questions, comments?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Phil, when are you expecting to go to bid for all of the improvements to Memorial Park?
So the project's out for bid now. And I guess is it appropriate to update the board now, just the status? Okay, I will let you know that the project was scheduled to advertise for bid a week ago Monday. And actually it was a week ago Monday. And there was a development on your Southeast Way project. And it could be that this little staff blurb didn't make its way up to your board yet. The Southeast Way project ran into some topsoil, like 10,000 yards of it, underneath where we were anticipating structural fill would be. And of course, as the world goes, when we went out and did borings, we bored through here and sampled, and it was structural material. And when we moved over here, it wasn't structural material. So the project ran into a deficit, which would have created on the order of a couple $100,000 increase in the project cost. And this is the way serendipity happens. As I was working on this project late one night, Matt Gillis walks by me and tells me the story, just in case I get a phone call from the mayor. And I said, well, wait a second. Our Memorial Park project is generating excess structural fill because there's really nice sand in here. Maybe we should work out a deal. So the long story short is the Southeast Way contractor is going to have a change order to come in, demo the material, or demo the site here, and essentially bring this project to what we call subgrade, and take all the structural material out of this project, haul it to the Southeast project, and then backhaul topsoil to this project. It'll probably save Ignite as the funder somewhere between $140,000 to $170,000 on the projects. So the reason I kind of backed up, and to answer your question, Commissioner Arman, is you'll see work start there next Monday, but that won't be the contractor that was the low bidder on the overall project. It's just the initial contractor. He's going to cut it to subgrade. The project's out to bid. We're opening bids on the 30th, and it's going to go to City Council on July 5th for consideration for award. So in our pre-construction, or our pre-bid meeting is on this Friday, where we walk the contractors through the site, potential contractors, the bidders.
So we're basically just paying truck time to swap fill for topsoil.
Essentially, yes. Yeah. And we're also paying what we are paying, which we would have paid in the Memorial Park project, we're paying the Southeast Way contractor to demo this site, take the fence out, strip the sod, all those things, because we would have, and so we negotiated with him on a bunch of those numbers. Fortunately, we had a gigantic bid tab off of Southeast Way that had unit pay items in there, so we had tree removal. So we knew what he bid on that, and we used those numbers on the Memorial Park project. Some of them weren't quite equivalent, because obviously production on this site is lower than production on Southeast Way, because it's a big open road, and this is much slower work. But we think that we negotiated a very fair price with La Riviere on the change order. And it saved the project $150,000. And Tony's been part of the project and was in the construction meetings when the idea was presented.
Great.
Okay.
The next item I have, Mr. Chairman, thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.
Is Midtown surface parking lots. Put up a graphic here. See if I can see the slide too again. So this is just a graphic of our Midtown ownership. You have the bare land parcels where the sod and irrigation is going in. You have our 823 4th Street Paris Flea Market building, and then our 2 surface parking lots. So, you know, as you recall, I was asked to kind of pursue the cost of resurfacing those 2 parking lots. And I was going down the path on that front, and it was daylighted to me that if you are going to resurface lots, it triggers stormwater issues, which involves either grassy swales or dry wells, installing dry wells, which greatly kicks up the cost of the project. So the bids were coming in the $40,000 to $50,000 range without the dry wells or the grassy swales. And given the board's direction at the last board meeting to kind of consider looking for RFPs, I've rethought the issue and have come up with a proposal to the board of a slurry seal and striping, restriping those lots for the time being. Talking to Tim Martin with the city, this effort will greatly enhance the parking lots, will last for a couple, 3 years, allowing plenty of time for the board to make a decision if they are going to move forward with any type of development, so that we wouldn't be tearing out investments that we would made in grassy swales and dry wells if a project goes in there. So this initiative will cost about $6,500, and it will clean and prep the lots, then slurry seal the lots. It will restripe the lots to optimize stall count, meet ADA requirements. We will place tire bumps in the appropriate spaces, which will also address the property line issue we have on the 839 lot. We will install 1 set of removable rubber speed bumps in the 3rd Street lot drive lane to reduce the speed of folks traveling through the lots, because if you've ever been up there, a lot of people use that as just a cut through to 4th Street at a fairly good clip. So we thought we'd put a speed bump on the 3rd Street lot to kind of slow folks down. And we would install the necessary handicap parking spaces and signage. So that would be my recommendation to the board, that we proceed at that path until further resolution is defined on what we plan to do in Midtown long-term.
Do you want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just going to ask if you need a motion.
Yes.
I was going to ask that too.
I would make a motion that we proceed per your proposal.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion to do the slurry solution?
No, I think that's a great solution. Those lots aren't that bad a shape. I mean, they're kind of bad, but they're not that bad, and I think that's a great solution to it while we try and find a project that is something really great for the Midtown neighborhood that they embrace, if that can happen, but that buys us some time.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The final item I have, Mr. Chairman, is the River District expansion, new district creation, the Welch Comer professional due diligence services engagement pertaining to River District expansion, new district creation. So I once again invite Phil Boyd to visit with the board. I have a copy of his proposal. I emailed this to you, but here's a hard copy in case you need to look at it. But the proposal is, total is $24,000, and it's separated into several different tasks. Phil, do you want to take it from there, or do you want me to?
Whichever you,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, get your name and address, please.
Bill Boyd, 350 East Kathleen.
Hudson.
So the scope of services that's in front of the board for consideration is part of the due diligence effort, and there's really two parts to this. There's the City of Coeur d'Alene part that we have they've requested a professional services from us as well, and then there's the Ignite part. They really will work together, but could be independent. Ignite's interest, and you see some of the work product up here right now, so we've started early, and so I guess if I'm not authorized, you guys have a bunch of free work, including the estimate that Tony referenced earlier about the cost of the road. What Tony didn't emphasize as much as engineers like to emphasize is that was a very, 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 very preliminary estimate based on a limited amount of data. So when it was $4.5 to $5 million, it was literally coming up with a rough cross-section like this, as Tony described to you, a very boulevard feel for it, and using this footage of road in here, but earthwork was not in there, things like that. There were utilities, water, sewer, based on unit pricing we've seen in other projects. So that's my commentary on that number, is that it's a very soft number. This scope of work that's in front of you would take that into a deeper level, to the point where I guess if you are my client on this matter, we would feel comfortable making recommendations and good financial decisions off it. So that's what the scope of work presents in front of you. That's kind of that task 2. The task 1 is obviously doing the project management coordination with Tony. Task 3 is a little bit of opinions of costs in the pro forma, and that's doing things, again, with Tony and the board, kind of looking at what might be the absorption, how much are the land values, what's the return on investment, things that you would do kind of in a scenario like you're a developer, because ultimately you're going to make a decision, should you purchase this or should you not. And then the fourth task is just things that I don't know that Tony or the board might ask me to do, exhibits, public presentations, things like that, and we typically put a placeholder in like that, so then when a request is made, we can ask Tony or the board, would you like us to just put that under additional services?
And just to follow up on that, or to add on to it, we have another kind of two parallel initiatives going along with this, is that we need to come up with financial plans for the expanded River District and plan and the creation of a new district. So we need to kind of have some numbers this summer in place to kind of give an idea whether we can make city council comfortable that we can pay the city back the $8 million that they're expecting based on our construction estimates, and taking that dirt that is doing nothing right now and converting it into usable property that we can sell and receive property taxes and sale values from. So we need to kind of do a lot of this work this summer, because when we get into the fall, when these plans get approved, there's kind of month-long review periods, so that it takes a lot of time. So having Phil and team help us through this now is critical to not only helping the city get comfortable about how we can make this all work, but also for our URD planning efforts.
Just a quick question. Do you feel that this big wide boulevard is that going to be the right feel for the size of this property? Will there be enough traffic? Is that?
I'll
right
tell you,
scale?
I think the origin of that came out of a discussion that Tony and Hillary Anderson and Chris Bosley and I were having, and it was just this kind of initial take a look at it. When you actually start looking at the size of that, my gut tells me it consumes too much real estate. And so I guess because I'm an entrepreneur and a capitalist, I start to see, geez, we need to really shrink that. And while I love the idea of the median, because I think it is really neat to have that, and we could create something special there, it probably doesn't need to be this wide. We could do some narrowing up of the corridors, maybe shrinking up the grass areas here, and just generally trying to narrow that up.
Yeah, partly, aside, I share the same concerns, and then I wonder how much traffic it has to carry. I mean, what's at each end of this big boulevard?
Therein lies one of the challenges of
It looks
doing
like
this.
it's bigger than the feeder streets that are
Yeah.
going to it.
Well, and that's why you
And
can see this up in here. Is this really where the boulevard wants to go? And this Suzanne is a, we'll say, discouraged route? Because this is not a fantastic route to get to this site. This could be the actual really desirable route is down here off of Atlas from the traffic circle that's up here, the roundabout that'll be in that location. So your point is right on the money, but when Tony and I were discussing, and I said, well, I gotta have something to start with. I'm gonna start with a big boulevard idea, with the idea it's probably gonna get shrunk down from there for really practical reasons.
Yeah, I understand, this is preliminary, I was just asking, so.
No, I think this is all good, and it's part of our diligence process that we need to do for the city. So, Tony, are you looking for a motion?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Ignite CDA Stimson due diligence scope of work presented by Welch Coleman.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? That's not to exceed 25K?
I think it comes in at 24,000.
24, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Phil. Now it's time for board commissioner comments.
I have one super quick one.
Yes, sir.
Thinking about the parking garage, Brad, I'm sure we've already done a little bit of this, but there's a lot of communication going on about having retail presence within the parking garage. There's a lot of communication going on about roughing in the area for a transit center possibly in the future. Should we consider taking out those 3 parking spaces and putting a fairly flexible commercial space in that spot?
You know, that question or discussion actually came up. If I understand you right, are you asking where the potential transit center could go in the future? Could that maybe be leasable space?
Correct, now.
Until if and when the transit authority got to the point where it made sense to have it there?
Correct.
I think what was relayed, and I think that was from Sam, the deputy city attorney, is the directions we have from the council is that's gonna be roughed in for a future transit center, and putting it into retail or office space or something is beyond the scope of what the council directed us. That doesn't mean they wouldn't go along with that, but.
No problem. I just think it's worth discussion as we move forward. No.
And if the
Sewer and
council
conduit and
is
stuff
okay
like
with
that
that,
will be roughed in.
that all has to be roughed in. I mean, so it could be done if the council is comfortable with that.
I think it's an ROI question.
Did they authorize the storage for the downtown association in that parking garage?
Yeah, that's going in there too.
Yeah.
Is it
We've
like
got a
1,000
spot.
square feet or something, or?
I think it was 1,200 feet, yeah, it's gonna be, some steel studs and metal, I think, and could be removed in the future, but, it'll have a roll-up garage door, so.
Nice.
And Terry Cooper from the downtown was there and at the meeting, saw the plans, and he was real pleased with it and said it would work just fine for them.
Thanks. Any other commissioner comments?
I guess the only thing that I would add, for anyone that made it down to the grand opening of the carousel, the building looks pretty cool, but actually what looks even better is that when you get inside and you see all those shiny horses and.
It's amazing.
and
It really is.
It
And the
really
people?
is nice, and
Was
it wouldn't
neat.
have happened without the commitment of this board to make that happen in that plaza area. The downside, which will lead to a good side, is that doing that is kind of like remodeling your house, is that you look at the next room, which is the grandstand, and you say, okay, now we gotta do the grandstand now too, because that kind of sticks out now, and I know that's in the plan for next year to do something there
I think
too.
that'll be a
so,
great project to finish that off.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Mr. Mayor. First thing I
That would
thought
be
when
good.
I stood next to it.
Yeah.
I guess
Thank
we're
you
all
very-
thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And Memorial Grandstand didn't look so bad before when everything was gravel around there and so forth, but now it's looking so great. Memorial Stadium is really standing out, needing some upgrading, so.
Thank you for those comments. Anything else? And this is the second time now for public comment. Do we have any other public comment? Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
What do you think about leasable space for the future?